Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. There is so much to talk about, so much so that Mark forgot, and he was like, is there anything to talk about? And then it's like, wait, actually, there's a ton of things to talk about, and we're going to talk about all of them on the show because we just reminded Mark what those things are, and now he's ready. Of course, this show's brought to you by Alienware. We'll talk more about them in a little bit, but first, my constant co-host, Mark Zimmerman, is back on track with the news. How's it going, Mark?
It's going good. I watched Renfield and John Wick 4, and I think I'm in the minority camp. Didn't love John Wick 4. Didn't like it that much.
Renfield?
No, that was one of the worst scripts I've ever seen in my life, which is crazy how bad it was. But that wasn't a shock. I heard it was bad before then. It was a bit of a surprise how bad of a B plot they decided to go with. What was the core conceit of that movie? Like, it was just so stapled on, it made no sense. But then, John Wick 4, I just it was just like it was fine. It was okay, but it didn't live up to the legacy. It felt like.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's tough. I'm here for you, buddy. All right, next up is our guest, Cubby double X, not to be confused with Cubby triple X, which is a very different Cubby. But Cubby,
same person, but a different kind of brand.
yeah. You know, listen, the pay for Challenger casters is not great, and sometimes they have to pick up other content creation in other fields, and we don't judge them for that. How's it going, Cubby? Welcome to the show.
It's going great. It was, I had a nice day of throwing my lead in my match against Jat earlier. I was able to get out and golf in the off season, and skipping over all the content that I do or do not do. Sometimes, who knows, but. No, thanks for the invite. Glad to be on. And yeah, there's a lot of news, especially around the Challengers scene, that I don't know how many people listening will be familiar with, of like what's going on behind the scenes. But I find it very fascinating for NA as a whole, and excited to talk about that and more.
So, yeah, no, I think
Did you
go ahead, Mark.
Lose to Jet on purpose for the social currency?
No. We've like played twice, and I should have put this guy away. Like
for context, Cubby played golf all day with Jet.
Yeah,
he said that.
He said it before the start of the show.
Yeah.
No, Travis does not listen to anyone else. He does that in real life too. He's just zoned out.
No,
Cubby said that he gave up a lead to Jat just like 2 seconds ago.
Huh? Jat's a good player. He is a good golfer. He's better than me, which is surprising. But I played like a lot in high school, like 10 years ago. Some of the guys I played with are on the tour now, which is pretty cool. I was good. I am good. I don't play a lot anymore, but it's fun playing with Chad because we're both pretty good players, so we can actually play a close match.
So wait, Cubby, did you intentionally lose to Jet for social clout?
No, I did not. I've thrown short putts, and I don't love it. I was making all my putts all day and threw some short ones.
I'm opening up my VOD review on the second monitor.
No, Mark, I'm just kidding.
I feel redundant, so I'm just going to double dip here.
It's just a little meme, okay? We're just having a good time here on Hotline League. All right. No, there is a lot to talk about, and I'm glad that Cubby's coming on. By the way, I do like that Cubby spends his off time like hanging out with personalities about their passions, because he just spent today playing golf with Jat, and then last Sunday, not yesterday, but a week ago, playing Magic the Gathering with me. So this man knows how to tap into people's passions.
How to climb social ladders.
Yes.
That's what he knows.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely don't share any hobbies with anyone.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
I just hop around wherever I can.
He spends the entire day before learning, and he's going to be cooking with Cutie Cinderella next week.
He's going to be in my DMs talking about AI tonight.
I've been talking basketball with some folks too. The Bulls I hope they blow it up, but I try and be a human outside of League, right? This is like my DJing topic, and then we try and be well-rounded, right?
I don't subscribe to that philosophy.
A very interesting week, because the big news 2 days ago, I think it was, I got a message from somebody that said, hey, do you want a free espresso machine? And I said, sure. And they're like, are you home? I said, yeah. And they're like, be over in 10 minutes. And then Mark Zimmerman showed up at my home with a virtually brand new espresso machine. And was like, do you want me to teach you how to do this? And I'm like, I'm busy right now. And he's like, okay, I'll leave. And so now just in the kitchen looking pristine is a very fancy looking espresso machine. Thank you, Mark Zimmerman.
That's the kind of relationship you guys have. That is fire.
He gives me his garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't brand new. I've had it for like 4 years. I did use it a lot. And I got to the point where I wanted an espresso machine that had actual control because it's like the one for dummies. And so I gave it to Travis. It's like a $300 machine though, and it still runs pretty good. So
wait,
that's nice.
It's for dummies, so you gave it to me?
Well, it's like an intro level machine, where it's like you don't actually have any control of what you're doing. It just does it.
Sounded like you were implying I'm a dummy.
We're all dummies at some point when we're starting out.
Thank you. That's very inspirational.
Some of us just actually grow from there, though. You know?
I see. Okay. Anyway,
like some of us are on the dummy machines their entire lives. Some of us upgrade.
Let's talk about what's happened the past week in the world of League of Legends esports. Okay, so I did an interview with John Needham. I would encourage people to go check it out. I think it's actually relatively interesting. There's not as much newsy stuff in it as before, but we talk about like what's the plan with the LCS commissioner situation and how happy is he with the LCS spring viewership, which I think he said that he's both happy and unhappy. And then we talked about, I guess the big thing as a segue, because there's probably some stuff worth talking about that in there. So if anybody watched it and has some things they want to call in about the interview, that's all cool. But also one thing that I brought up with him was basically sources had told me that team owners were trying to get Riot to remove the requirement to field challenger teams. So for those that don't know, LCS teams have, since the beginning of franchising, I think even before then technically, been required to field, no, not technically, because before then it was a promotion, whatever. They were required to field a academy team, this year now called a challenger team, and have like this is like a development thing. They are pushing to make it so that they don't have to do this, and they are basically citing financial hardship, I guess. So basically they want to save money on it. And I was a little surprised because I found this news out not too long before the interview. Like I think it was relatively new news. And I expected Needham to punt and basically be like, we don't comment on our ongoing conversations with team owners or whatever. And to his credit, he was basically like, yeah, we received the request and we're considering it. And not so many words. You can go look. It's not his. I'm paraphrasing, but that is pretty interesting. I know that it is not as like spicy, I think, as some stuff, but I mean, it's a fundamental change to the entire development system of the LCS, and in a world where we spend so much time talking about NA talent and import stuff and all that, LCS teams basically not having to field that that's interesting. Also, promotion relegation happened in Challenger, Cubby.
Yeah.
What happened there? Because I didn't pay attention.
So there were 4 teams that competed in the Challengers League. So that is what like Academy is now called this year because they expanded. They had 6 provisional teams. The bottom 4 of those actually like competed in this promotion relegation tournament. They had to fight to like get back in against 4 of the OQ teams. And 3 of the OQ teams actually ended up winning, and they relegated all the official LCS affiliates. One was called The Last Dance, but they were CLG Faith. And then AoE has a partnership with Golden Guardians, so technically they're like a non-affiliate affiliate. So AoE got back in, but then I think the biggest deal is the fact that Maryville actually got promoted into the league. So this is like the first time where, like in a lot of other games, we see collegiate teams like be able to compete with semi-professional or professional teams at times. Like thinking of Overwatch League, like Maryville, their team like actually beat Overwatch League teams like in a tournament they had, like offset. This is actually though the first time where like a collegiate team has actually been promoted into a tier 2 for League, and that's a really big deal. Like the fact that barrier was broke down. So I think Maryville, they've been the collegiate team that's promoted the most people to pro historically. So I think the fact that Maryville like now get this too, I mean, mad props to them. That's a really big deal, at least in the dev space. That wall was broken down. It's definitely going to open up quite the box of worms now with scheduling that and collegiate matches, which will be going on at the same time now for week 1 of NACL.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, so that happened. And then probably the biggest news, I think in some ways that the Challenger stuff is bigger from a scale perspective than the EG news, but the EG news broke, and that's probably the biggest from a oh my god stuff perspective, and that's basically EG looking to change out, or they are likely removing 4 of the players or trading 4 of the players on their team. The only one supposedly staying is JoJo. This is stuff that both myself and Animatinum, and I always struggle with his name. He's a lovely person though. Have reported. So, wow. And then everyone freaked out because Vulcan signed with an EU agency and he's in Berlin. My understanding is that he's in Berlin for a personal reason, not because he's I think he was always planning on going to Berlin for a personal reason, not because he's necessarily fielding stuff.
Also, to add to that, I mean, it's pretty common for pros in their off season to go boot camp wherever the big event is. I think TL are thinking about even boot camping over in Europe as just as a whole, just scrim the MSI.
Yeah, they have
teams,
another
only
training facility there. So
yeah, so I see some people freaking out. Also, I love how we it is Vulcan too, so I don't even know if it's legit or not. Who knows? But
I mean, I'm not saying it's I don't think it's crazy to think that he could be looking for an LEC spot, right?
Oh yeah,
that would be very exciting for him to be a North American player getting to play in the LEC, a league that has oftentimes been more competitive internationally. It's a different experience and blah 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 blah. But I still think, not based off of anything in particular that I've heard, but just off of common sense, that I feel like the most likely place for him is FlyQuest. But we will see. We will see. Crepo in the chat says, just came back from clubbing in Berlin and Vulcan was out there half naked on the dance floor. Okay, see? Again, personal reasons. All right, so we could talk about that. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting? I feel like there's at least one thing that I'm forgetting, but I mean, MSI doesn't start until after we do our next episode. However, I guess I should say...
the bracket?
Yeah, we have the bracket. Actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, there was the draw show. There was all the European news. There was one other thing I just saw that I think you forgot to mention, but I can't remember it now. I'm already.
This is what Mark does in real life, Cubby. By the way, he sees something and he has it in his mind, and then it just goes out of his mind. It's just that's such a Mark thing to do. Anyway, he'll remember it a second. But I should mention this is the last episode I will be doing in North America for at least 3 weeks, because I am leaving to go to Europe on Friday. I'll be covering Media
Travis
Day.
is also joining the LEC.
I'm joining the LEC.
Vulcan has signed with. Yeah.
Vulcan encouraged me. Yes, thank you. I'm getting out of this. NA sucks. LEC forever. LOL. NA teeth. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, you can't go clubbing in LA half naked on the dance floor. You must be in Europe for that. Part of LEC. So. If you want to follow Vulcan and his steps,
yes,
good strategy.
Okay. Anyway, there's that. But so all I'm saying is that Hotline League is going to. Mark and I haven't figured out what the schedule is going to look like, because I'm going to be in the UK, which is 8 hours different, which means that the show would start at 3 a.m. for me and end at 5, which is bonkers. So it might be at an earlier time or whatever. We're gonna figure stuff out.
Yeah, I also might be a vegetable because I think I will be on my recovery day on Monday in Europe. In terms of jet lagging.
Oh yeah, you're coming in a little bit after me. I guess I forgot that it's public that you're now. I'm so glad it's public now. To quote a 2014 meme, that
congrats.
Mark is doing MSI stuff. Can you say what you're doing, Mark?
Yeah, I'm doing every day of play-ins, I think. Casting some games, doing some AD. I am also joining the LEC, correct?
Yeah. We're
Congrats.
all getting out of here. We heard the Academy news, or the Challenger
meanwhile,
news.
my league. Yeah.
He's also going to the ERLs. Good luck, Cubby.
Yeah. LFL, yeah.
God, can you imagine? What if should we just... I can't wait for the Reddit thread, because it's inevitable. That's going to be NA Challenger should just become another part of the ERL.
Just how about LCS? Why are we limiting it to Challenger?
Great point.
I know that player loans have been talked about on this podcast before, about like loaning players out to LFL and some other things. That I feel like that's still an interesting angle. So some value there. Yeah.
Anyway,
caster loans, who knows? Yeah.
Let's spend a little bit of like maybe 5 minutes before we start getting calls talking about the. Well, I don't know, Mark. Do you want to wait until we get Academy? Something about the Challenger stuff? I keep calling it Academy. The Challenger stuff before we get Cubby's take on it?
I got one.
Okay.
Call ready to go on Challenger, but do you want me to have a take on it first, or
I mean, up to you. You know the take. So, do you think it's better for us to talk about it now, or do you think we should wait till the take comes in and then sort of share our opinions then?
It's a little bit more of like a forward-thinking take than like a rumor takes. We can talk on the rumors.
Yeah, let's talk about the rumors then. So
yeah,
we already know the rumor, but Cubby, I am curious. Can you say whether or not you knew about this or heard about this before stuff started percolating? And if so, what your reaction was when you did hear?
I mean, I think the like big thing, like when this split started, I was pretty confident that going into 2024 that like challengers teams would not be required for franchised orgs. I think the really interesting part is kind of what you were highlighting about the emergency meeting / vote that owners held to actually have that requirement be pushed up to summer. I think doing that in between splits would, I mean, obviously, like I have personal stake in this, right? Given what my job is. And I know that like from talking with Riot, like they still want to have an official broadcast, obviously, just be like different partners coming in. But I think the really interesting part is just the fact that like orgs want to push up the timeline, and a lot of that does have to do with money. I think that like we can talk more with the call, but like having a challengers team for orgs is like over a $500,000 investment, like per year. A lot of that's based on like the academy minimum is based on like the California state minimum salary. So like I even know that like it's been talked about like moving what the home base would be potentially like for challengers teams, because if you move the home base to Texas or Illinois, you could have a more central location to the server and also have a cheaper salary for orgs. Like a lot of balls are still up in the air right now, but I knew like going into 2024 that challengers would likely not be required, and from everything I've heard, that's going to be the case, that franchise teams will not have to have a challenger slot. I think that I believe the vote was unanimous, but some of the teams are voting that way because they still want to keep their team because it will give them a competitive advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Get my competition out of the league.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I mean, if you think of the money that EG saved on Jojo Pion and Danny, like, in the long haul, that's still a lot of money saved. I think orgs will still want to invest in that.
Also, it's a PR win. Like, if the news had not come out that all of them voted to lift it, and, you know, they're like 6 teams pull out, then the other 4 are like, we're still committed to development. You know what I mean? Even though behind the scenes they were voting against it, which I find funny.
Yeah, so, like, I don't know, like, what the situation is going to look like. I mean, I'm not a journalist, but I obviously, like, you know, I try to keep up, and this does involve my career a little bit. So I'm really curious, like, how things will look, because honestly, at the time that like we're having this episode, I really don't know what things will look like in summer. Like, I have an idea of what things will look like, but if it goes that way, then a lot of it's like how many teams stay. Technically, that's part of the franchise slot. So, like, do those slots get sold like they're franchise slots? Or, like, if a team just wants to drop out, like, how is that slot managed? I think it's going to be a lot of questions that will be, like, we don't have answers for with how that's going to work at the moment. And it's going to lead to one of the more fascinating off seasons potentially if they decide to push up that requirement to summer versus, like, starting next year.
As more time goes on, I'm starting to feel like they will. Not because I've heard anything in particular.
I've heard that they will. Yeah. I've heard that it's confirmed.
Okay, well,
I haven't heard that officially. I've just heard that from, you know, some of the teams. So,
yes. I think that Riot is trying to help lift the financial burden on the team so much that they just seem like, you know, had this been 2 years ago, I think people would be livid and Riot would have been like, yeah, no. But now it just seems like they're like, okay, whatever we can do to save you money. So I don't know. I hope that they don't sell the spots. I feel like that's very goofy.
I don't know how it would work, but like, again, they're going to have to figure out a way for that to work. Also, there's like, I think like a lot of like the fan sentiment is maybe like, okay, well, like if TSM don't want to have a challengers team, like maybe we get an org like Sentinels to come in. I really don't see that happening because like there's no way still to get into the tier 1 league.
Yeah.
So like why would a big org like actually like, want to step in when you're only limited to tier 2? It could be a good opportunity for some smaller orgs to hopefully like help out players. And obviously like the crappy part about all this, like we haven't talked about, is like, yeah, like I get from the org standpoint like why they want and kind of need cuts, but also like I would like to think that players have an okay deal in Academy. Like you get a minimum salary that's reasonable. Usually housing's a part of that. Food's a part of that. Like these guys can actually, it's a legitimate option for these guys at their age to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a gap year a couple years and not go to college and do this because I can make some money. I can really enjoy myself and see where it takes me, right? Like with that now dropping, it really will be like, you are taking a massive risk to do this. And I know that like some players in our league did that, like Cincinnati Fear, they rented out a house for like the majority of the season. I know from talking with like some of those players, like, yeah, we pushed off college. Like, you know, we're taking on multiple credit cards at some points. Like that is the situation like those players were in. They did great, but like, you don't love to hear that, right? I wish things were like more stable for the players. So it's going to be a little bit of like give and take. I really hope that like it's the best situation for the players as possible, but also I think that for the orgs at this point, like there's no way that this wasn't going to happen. And I'm really curious what ends up happening.
Yeah, I'm very curious what orgs, if any, end up sticking around, or if they all just bail out. It's been implied to me that some teams will hold like they will have amateur teams,
yeah,
but not challenger teams or whatever, because you can save so much money having amateur, and then you're still being like, yeah, we care about development. I don't know. It's
also yeah. Also, like for the record on this, I think the biggest problem still that like Riot faces with this game is just like I still think like for esports, like the entire appeal about esports is like getting that demographic where it's like 18-year-olds, because like I was a marketing major beforehand. That demographic is so valuable for sponsors because what it was, and like this is what we actually pitched to my college, like when I co-founded the 9th varsity esports program in the nation when I was in school. Pretty much our entire pitch was based around emissions and the fact that like the population like follows esports is going to be 18-year-olds that are more likely to be STEM major, more likely to come from like higher socioeconomic status because of how expensive it is to like actually have a PC in North America. And if you are a company where you are car insurance, car company, credit cards, banks, like if you get a customer at 18, you get them for life. So like if you can go to that company and say like, hey, like you're going to reach an audience that has more money and likely to have a higher education, that is smart enough with tech to like run ad block. Like that has always been the real appeal, like for esports, like where I think it's like really sustainable. Riot with like the game right now, it's a dwindling player population that is not attracting the 18-year-olds because I talk with high schoolers or like, you know, people like run high school programs. It's really tough to convince a high schooler to pick up a game that has more than 100 items, more than like 160 champs, and it's like so figured out and complicated, right? Like I pretty much like Riot needs to continue to try and like lower that entry base and like that bar. That's like something I think they made good changes this offseason, but like that still is the biggest thing that really stands in front of player development here in North America. Between that and then how expensive it is, like actually have a PC and access it, which is like where high school esports can help out too. But it is a really tough situation when thinking about this versus Korea, where you can literally like play for $2 a day for an entire day in a PC bank with all your friends, and everyone plays this game because it's part of the culture, right? Like that is ultimately like what you're trying to defeat, and I think that like it's really really tough to do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think even like I would reshift from even thinking you want to defeat that.
you can't, right? Like there's no way you can beat it. I always thought that high school esports would be the fastest way to like try and emulate the social aspect, and also a lot of schools like have the support to try and like support a league team. Like they might have PCs like in their library, and maybe a teacher that like is a coach. One of the players I coached in college, he has a league team like at the high school that he teaches at now. Like they had the resources there, they were able to figure it out. Like that's doable, and that's like the closest you can get to kind of emulating what you have over there. But yeah, you're right. There is no way you can beat it or compete against it. It's just the advantage that like exists over there based on like the culture. But
yeah, it's also like, oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, go ahead.
I can say it's also like this issue is somewhat intrinsically linked to the potential 3 import slots, which like LS was talking about rumors of Korean pros already being contacted for next split to be just basically bench warmers for when a potential rule change comes through. And like people in the Reddit thread, I think we're doing a good job pointing out that like the knock-on effect isn't just like NA fans don't support imports, because we do, but also like what it means to be an NA pro player in this ecosystem, where you don't seem valued by your teams and the orgs, and the Riot itself does not seem to be pushing for your growth. Playverse was a disaster. It sounds like, I admit I'm not like the most knowledgeable everything.
If you want to open up that rabbit hole,
no, I don't think we have time to go down.
I'm just saying that like there's been a lot of developmental problems, as well as like this potential thing with Academy getting cut at the same time, that like it doesn't feel like, if you are this young high school player like you're talking about, and someone's like, hey, we should maybe go do League or something, it doesn't feel good right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I know that like, I mean, I can like look at like specific examples of like kids like going from high school to college. Like it exists, and again, I think that like the real appeal of like the education route in terms of developing people is just the money, right? So I think that like going that route, it solves a lot of the money issues. Like then kids are getting a scholarship to pursue their education and do this, instead of like skipping out on school to do this, right? So that's like always kind of like the argument for collegiate, but the system's definitely not built for it at the moment. It's just like, how can you support like kids at this point, like here versus Korea, where like they're like, you leave high school, you like go to a team house, right? Like you're a trainee. That cannot be emulated here. It's tough.
Well, let's get into calls so we can talk about this, and we can talk about the EG stuff and so much more. Mark, do you want to grab our first caller?
Sure.
All right, off he goes. Well, he's gone. Thank you to some of these folks who came in and subbed. Thank you to the Quelchinator, Skylimix for 1 year, T-Bone, J-Shrode for 28 months, a Karn Liberated, a large Farva gifted a sub, Smash Ika, Shanatonin, Ivio Jico. I always struggle with that, but thank you for the year. We got Nicole here. Nicole, where are you calling from?
Canada.
From Canada. What do you want to talk about on the show? And welcome back. It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to talk about is that instead of challenger, like required challenger teams should be encouraged to run 7 to 9 man rosters to continue NA development while being able to cut costs of staffing the entire different team. Obviously, like it's not ideal, and I don't want to see Challengers League gone, but I think it'll help in the short term, just getting through this like tough financial period. And I saw like a few question marks on my take. I kind of want to clarify that it's not necessarily like playing stage games with the main team, but I think having like 2 to 3 players that show like a lot of young promise that could like scrim with the team and work with the team directly could be really beneficial. Teams could also save like money not having to have staff and analysts for a second team or space for a second team to practice. So yeah, I think this could maybe be like some sort of little solution.
Yeah, I think my concern is that from a financial perspective, you're still paying 2 to 3 people additionally to live in California and LA. If they are associated with the LCS team, there's probably an expectation that they're going to get paid a little bit more even than what some of the Academy folks were getting paid. So, or Challenger. So while you don't have to have all the infrastructure in a Challenger team, you still need to like manage these people. And so I don't actually know, I know Cubby was quoting it's like $500K for a Challenger team or more in terms of annual costs. I worry that you're still in like the 250 to 300 range if you have 3 additional players in terms of paying them, giving them insurance, housing them, et cetera, et cetera. I guess the argument could be maybe they don't need to get housed and they should be on their own or something. I think there are some costs that people build into the Challenger stuff that maybe they don't need to, but I just worry that it's not going to save the money that a lot of these guys are hoping they can save.
Oh boy, I have a lot of thoughts. Just first on the money saving point, like it's just cringe to me in a lot of ways when you see like the facilities and like the fucking expenditures of some of these orgs and stuff during the time period where they had the VC money just slinging around tens of millions of dollars, and now this shit. It just,
dude, 3 years ago. I mean, as you say that, I'm just thinking about 3 years ago where it was 100T and TSM who both bragged about the cost of their facilities. It's like, I forget what the numbers were, but it was something like TSM had a number, and then 100T announced that they had a way bigger number for their facility, and then TSM
made a bigger number.
Did a bigger number. Like the next time you saw theirs, it was bigger, and they're just like, tens and tens of millions of dollars, and now they're like, oh please,
Yeah,
baby Riot, we need just I don't want to spend 500K, you know, and it's just
yeah. I spent 50 million on my training facility. Sorry, I can't actually train anyone in it. I don't have the money to train people in my training facility now. So fucking stupid looking back at that kind of stuff. 6 million for whatever it was for like sword art and stuff, and now it's like, man, can't get 5 guys together for 500K for the future of our ecosystem. Sorry, can't do it, guys. Like that kind of shit.
TSM got their ex-champions back for that, you know, probably for less, you know, who knows?
Yeah, man, it's just like these kinds of things you just look back at, and like they felt gross at the time, and now they just feel extra bad where like everyone's trying to fucking cut every cost they can, and it's just like absolute buffoonery during that time period, and I hate it. And I know this is a tangent from the initial take,
no,
but
it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's frustrating when people are bragging about how much money they have, and then they're later on being like, "Oh, but please, Riot, make it so that I have to pay less because I don't have any money." Like, it's just, it is just cringe. I hate using that word, but I think it's the right word.
It is. Like, I agree. There's nothing like, I did not like those statements at the time, and I was like, you in a fucking burgeoning ecosystem can do something better with $40 fucking million than sinking it into real estate. Like, you know, like that's not how you grow your scene, and it's just like.
And then they also cut back on content. It's like oh, don't worry, guys. Like, we're gonna have this amazing facility, but we are not gonna have a development system, or we're gonna not create any more content, and blah blah blah. And then it's like, oh, it's the LCS that's the issue, and I'm like, well.
That could be a fun other tangent to go down. Maybe if we get a different call on that topic, because I have a lot of thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, some people in chat are saying like, "Oh, you couldn't have seen it coming because you know, blah blah blah." It's like every insider who was not huffing the copium or the hopium like knew that there was a bubble. You know, like I think Travis and I, like whether or not we've been saying it publicly, have been talking about that. Even when fucking VC teams were buying in 2018, I was telling them who would actually listen that like it's not this fucking like insano market that like is going to be baseball in 5 years like they thought it was and stuff. You know, like it's not that complicated to like look at that and see that was stupid. So like, yeah, I don't know. That's a tangent just to be like, you know, it was clearly not a good expenditure of money, and now like to see that this is where we're at, where we're like. I'm not saying academy system was perfect either. You know, like I think there's a lot of things that could have been better about it for player development and like, you know, getting these guys shots and like those kinds of things. But it's just like cutting. I don't know. It annoys me.
I mean, I think like getting back to the question or the idea, I think a big part of the perks of like a challengers team is like you're putting the players in the schedule and the situation that they will be in when they're going to be a pro. So, like, even, like, I think that personally, I would think a team of 5 is actually more valuable than just having a few subs, even if it does cost more, because then you can scrim someone in-house, but then also you are putting, like, the team and all those players through what the daily schedule is like if you're going to be an LCS pro. Like, you are training for that, right? And I think that, like, that's really important, especially, like, the kids, like, you're looking to attract, right? Like, you're getting essentially 17, 18, 19-year-olds, like, who are leaving the house for the first time, like, have to figure out how to be a pro in LA. That's tough. And like academy or challengers is a great way to like go about that. I think that like with what the idea is just having a few bonus spots. I mean, I like it. I think that the trainee system's good, like in Korea. I think that the key though is like having a staff to develop it, because ultimately you need to put more time in the players that you are developing than the players that are already your pros. They're gonna you need to teach them things. They need to learn things. I think it's actually a big shortcoming right now in the space is that all the high money jobs at the moment are for being an LCS pro coach. There are much different skills required to be an LCS coach versus a challengers coach. Much like how there are different skills required to be an NBA coach versus an NCAA basketball coach, right? And like the ecosystem doesn't exist right now where you can get someone like a Coach K to exist. Like Spawn has done a great job with his teams over at TL. Like I'll shout him out specifically, right? He's had a lot of success ever since he has like come in there. Like that type of individual would be so valued, like in NCAA basketball, where you do have like a John Calipari or a Coach K, and it just isn't here. Because like if Spawn wants to have more success, like as a coach, he really can't in results, but monetarily, the only like way that like he'd go upwards is like being an LCS coach. Not everyone wants to do that, like everyone's kind of forced to do that, right? Just like given how the ecosystem works now, like there's not enough value put on development either, like in terms of staff. So I think that's like another interesting shortcoming that I don't know if that gets solved like by having subs, but like something else I don't know, just to think about like how things work at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good call out about like we take a very player focused perspective, but there's all the team staff of Academy who they are probably included in that 500K operating cost of the second level of coaches that you have to maintain. Who would all just be jobless effectively.
Yeah, there's so many. Like that's a crazy thing too. Is just like how many people are about to lose their jobs because of this stuff. You know, all at once. It's just bonkers. And obviously, it's not the first time we've seen people lose their jobs in the space this year. But I don't know. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so annoying to me that they're like pushing for this in the middle of the year, because if you could telegraph this now, if you could say, hey everyone, summer split starting, we just want to put out a thing, this is gonna be the last time that we have teams required to do this, then like everyone can prepare. But it sounds like everyone had behind the scenes an understanding that this was likely the last year, and now it's like, psych, we're moving this up 6 months. It's just like, I don't know. It's
again, like really my understanding of it is that there was an emergency meeting held by the owners, like they voted on this, right?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So, like this is what they want to cut. I get cutting costs, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like I am annoyed as well. Like I don't. Also, like if you think of like all like the operating costs like go into, I mean, you're signing a year lease for like the players' like apartments, right? Like all that stuff. I mean, that's like all factors in. It'd be so much easier to like have 3 months to actually prep to like not have a team, but doing this like over the summer is pretty wild.
No, and you could, I mean, you could essentially give people like 3 months heads up or something, or 4 months, and consider it like a severance thing. You know, you don't have to pay through the full year. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to go into there too. With like, so Riot has like a minimum guarantee supposedly to these teams, right? Like, if you cut out Academy, do we drop the minimum guarantee on them as well? Is it, you know, like, do we take the money?
Part of like changing states, right? Because then they could like the minimum guarantee could be lower because they could just do minimum salary for a different state, which would not be as much as California, right?
Yeah, for those that don't know, it's illegal to have a salaried employee. I think the number, it's been increasing. I think it's up to 64K or something like that, 62K.
Yeah.
Because it's based off a calculation of what the California minimum wage is versus however many hours that person's expected to be working throughout the year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I also mean like Riot sends them, you know, some money. I assume part of it is inclusive for like the idea that they're operating Academy. If you don't have this kind of money being pumped into the ecosystem, is Riot going to take that money and directly invest it into the Challenger / Tier 2 by increasing prize pools or appearance fees for competing in this league or something like that? You know, like to try and avoid some of the economic hit that this Tier 2 is going to get hit by if the teams just. If the money's getting funneled from Riot to teams to players, and then teams just cut off access and keep the money, you know, like, it seems weird to me. So like, there's a lot of questions that I have about exactly how this would go down.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Nicole. I know we ran.
All right.
When we went way off your topic, but
real quick on her actual topic, sure. Then. I hope that teams include 6 men in an ecosystem like this, players that you really believe in. I think the risk that we didn't really talk about is that if like you're getting good data on this pro player, like if me and my 5 other teammates and a couple coaches are getting good data on this player or that player, it's not going to be public, and that will hurt the brand value and potential future of this player if I don't promote him directly, or like if people aren't scrimming against him and seeing it. It seems like it would be a risk for a lot of these guys to do it. Maybe it's good for development to like really young players, but like when you're trying to make your push into the LCS, I would think that it's probably better to be competing in the Tier 2 ecosystem and dominating it. But I could be wrong since we're not there right now. But that would be my concern for anyone who wants to go this route.
Honestly, this is also where like player loans come in. Like I know that when 100 Thieves Academy at the time, like they had Kenvi and Busio, they were shopping them around to like go to the LFL. Like if they were able to do a player loan, they could have done that. Those players would have played in a better league, so it would have like been a part of 100 Thieves. It could be a solution that could appeal some orgs to stay invested in the space and would be better situation for everyone involved, right? If they were able to do that. So that's something that I'm still like very for. And I mean, I want to see NA talent like compete here and like compete at the highest level, but also I recognize like if you're an org, you like Kenvi and Busio ended up being very valuable for 100 Thieves. That is a way that could have made them more valuable moving forward. And I like if orgs are struggling with money, that could be a good way to like help everyone out, right? And it'd be exciting. Like, hey, this player is in NA and he's playing for the LFL and he's doing really well. Like that is exciting. Like I think from a fan perspective, no matter if you're a fan of the NA or the LFL. So,
by the way, shout out to LS who's in the chat. I just had a weird thought that I know we've been going off on tangents, but I almost, I don't know how many people pay attention to like politics and economics or whatever, but there's all this conversation about trying to give the economy a soft landing through like the inflation rate hikes and stuff like that. I always feel like Riot has to be like, okay, how do we give the LCS a soft landing where we don't want a bunch of, I think there's an argument to be had that there are some teams in the LCS that are not interested in being in the LCS anymore, and you kind of like want to wash them out and try to get people that are interested in coming in to replace them. But you don't want all that to happen at once because it'll look bad, it'll drive prices down way too much and the value of the orgs and all that stuff. And so what you have to do is you have to figure out, all right, how do we give the orgs enough money where they can sustain themselves, but the ones that want out are like incentivized to leave. It's just a very fascinating situation. And I really wonder what some of those conversations are like behind the scenes at Riot. Yeah. Anyway, Nicole.
I vote we bring back relegations.
Oh God, don't. Now there's going to be 10 Reddit threads. Okay. Nicole, any thoughts on any of the stuff that we've said?
I did like Cubby's like kind of comment there on like sending players to LFL. I think like since the LFL has like gained a lot of traction, that would be a cool way. But I think it would obviously you would need a lot of like hype behind those players already, right? Because if you're just gonna send people to the LFL and people don't know anything about them right now, like I don't think there's like you're incentivized to like really follow them, right? But I think that's a cool idea for teams that are struggling with like the challenger system. But yeah, no, that's basically all I have. It is tricky, right, with like economics. Even I was thinking like, you know, the comment about like in academy, it like just having that environment of what the LCS like would be like for those players is like really valuable. And while I agree, I don't know if there's enough players in academy to make it necessarily worthwhile. Like let's say, I don't know the numbers on how many academy players end up playing in the LCS, right? But like to have that whole ecosystem for where we're not really promoting players anyways, yes, it's good for those few players that can't be promoted, but is it worth the money? I'm assuming the orgs don't think so. That's just basically where my take came from.
The orgs don't think that Challenger is worth the money because they see no revenue coming from Challenger, and so they think, hey, why am I running this team that doesn't make me any money, without understanding that, hey, maybe this is a team that could allow you to not have to spend a fuck ton of money on a Korean player.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, sorry. Can I be...
No, go for it.
Okay. But like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like any rookies that came in this year that have been like exceptional. Like obviously, like, you know, maybe it's a 2-year thing, right? It does take players like time, but I think at some point, like, what is the cost of just buying a Korean player or building up that whole ecosystem for a team to have one player come in to replace that Korean player? I really don't know what the difference in cost would be. I shouldn't act like I do, but
I think one of the really interesting points about that is that the cost of an LDL or a LCK Challengers team is far lower than what the cost of like a Challengers team in NA is. And that's another part of the reason that orgs are trying to like decrease that number, because like, again, they're paying 500K plus on average, like have one of these teams. Whereas over in LCK Challengers, those players are getting a few $1,000s a month at best. Especially if you aren't on a top team. So again, this is like the orgs in NA view this as a disadvantage because they're like, we are spending like 10 to 20x what they're spending in China or Korea to get players that are not as good because our ladder's not as good. Is kind of like the way they see it. So yeah, like if you're in Korea, like as I was saying, like you get far less. So
yeah, but I mean,
that's another part of the reason they want to cut it.
There's also the fact that the LCS teams can make more money in the North American market, right? Like comparing salaries there, it's the same old thing of like people that are like, oh my God, LA is so expensive to live in. Well, yeah, but like salaries are higher here, so it helps offset it, right? Like it's not the right comparison. Not to besmirch you or LS. I just mean like I don't want teams to have that as the cop out.
I don't either. I'm just talking about like from org perspective, like how they feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to at least get the org reasoning out there, so we're not just straw manning. Yep. Other than like we're frugal and cheap bastards, we're corporates. It's like no, there's some points worth making.
I mean, they're just all in tough. They're in a tough situation. It's just frustrating because in a lot of situations, or in a lot of areas, it feels like they put themselves into that situation.
Yes, absolutely. That 100% agree with. Just Nicole's point about the academy benefits that you might have seen this split. I think obviously Tenacity and Busio getting moved up from 100 Thieves. I think TL grabbed 2 players in Harry and Jan. And I know people are going to like nitpick that they weren't great or something like that, but they still use them and they're helpful. I think Balulu coming in showcased some really great stuff when he came in for Blaze Olive. I'm trying to think if I forgot anyone. I mean, obviously TSM did a lot of shenanigans. Tomo looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
That Hanser player seemed pretty good. And Wild Turtle, those were 2 good players that I think came from.
Shut up. Ayla came in and struggled, but at least like he was a academy player that got a shot. There are a lot of academy players this split who did get opportunities. No one like blew the lid off like this is the next all-pro super candidate. I mean, MNS again, like that. Having him allowed C9 to do that, but they probably would have done your approach and done a 6-man.
Yeah, LS has Stixay. Stixay is a good example.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, but the academy system still supported him.
I know.
All right, we're
gaming
it, but like, dude, that guy became a coach and was like, "Fuck this league," basically, and came back in because he's like, "Man, I still got it." But if he was like, "I still got it for 2K," I don't know if he would have done it.
I always love using Dokla as an example too, because like he's a great example of a player that was a pro and then went through the whole system, worked his ass off, and like is a much better player now, right?
Yeah.
So like the fact like we can support both is always great.
We have one of the team owners in the chat right now. One of the people who was at the alleged meeting where this voting took place, Tracy from Golden Guardians, who says, "I'm a Stixay stan." All right, Nicole, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, shout out numiii. It's so cool to see her go all the way to FlyQuest. That's huge.
Who?
numiii.
No, not familiar. Anyway, thank you so much for the call.
Okay.
I'll catch you next time.
I believe there's a full name in there,
Yeah, numiii goes Rars is her name.
Yeah.
I believe that she really wants people to use the full name. All right. Thanks, Nicole, again for the call. We can do one more call if you want to go grab another caller, Mark. That one went kind of long, but
yeah.
All right. What's going on in chat? People all go crazy. Insanity going in on Tracy. All right. Thank you to, where are we? Large Farva, Smash Ika, Shauna Tonin. Kylo Zen, Anchor, Sukasim, numiii gifted a sub to Beatdown. I'm Shibby, Grapescast, and then Coyote gifted a sub to LS, which I assume he really, really appreciates. Probably the best part of his day. Bluejay is here. Bluejay, where are you calling from?
Hello, calling from Ontario, Canada. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Bluejay?
Good.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is that John Needham still saying that he prefers if the LCS were at 12 noon kind of shows that there's a really big disconnect between what Riot thinks is a successful LCS versus what fans think is a successful LCS, and that's kind of frustrating.
Whenever he said that in the interview, you'll see that I just like laugh because I'm like, why? Why did you say that? There was no reason for you to say that. Like, that doesn't help at all. Like, you just hurt. Like, saying that it's like an ego thing a little bit, right? And like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like sorry, I'm like, why did you say that? Because you had you lost some viewer. Let's just say that the theory is correct that starting at 12 would have been better. You traded that viewership for goodwill with your main North American audience by saying, nope, we're going to choose a time that's better for you. We fucked up, blah, blah, blah. And so then at the end of it, when you're like, oh, never mind, part of me still thinks 12 would have been better. It's like, my man, why would you do that? Like, you undermined the only benefit that you supposedly got from this decision.
It's a lose-lose because one, you say that you fucked up by changing it basically by saying we should be at noon, and like, you know, the fact that you had been at noon and you changed it, so you say that was a mistake. And then you also piss off the people who are at least happy you made that mistake by saying that like you
you just
moving again.
was the meme everyone disliked that, you know, it's just
Yeah.
It was so damn predictable too. I remember you guys, multiple people on this freaking show saying like, now that they changed it, if things don't go well, they're just gonna be like, well, should have been at 12, and that's what's so like.
It was Mark is smiling right now while drinking that water because he said it on the show, but he said it about 15 times to me behind the scenes when we'd go on walks and hang out and just talk about stuff.
That's
He'd
funny.
be like, "Oh, they're gonna fucking say it." So whenever he said, like when John said that in the interview, I was like, "Oh God, no! It actually happened. He fucking said it. Why?" And it was just such a throwaway line too, right? Like it was so needless because the conversation.
It was this
around
moment of honesty, dude. I
Yeah,
appreciate the moment of honesty. All right, I'm not going to tear John Needham apart.
I'm
for
not
it,
tearing him down
but it
either.
is.
It's just funny how unnecessary it was and how it just didn't help anything. Like I could have, I guess, a different person doing that interview, which is probably what some people would have liked. The person some people would like me to be would have been like, really, you think 12? Let's get back into this and open this fucking can of worms. But I was just like, this is such a ridiculous thing. I've got limited time. I'm just going to move on to the next question because I need to get through all this shit.
I don't think that helps at all. I don't think it helps at all if you react really big to that. Also, like, as much as we're all saying like we're a little disappointed with his views on it, we are, I think, for the most part, pretty appreciative that he does these interviews. And so if you just do the interviews just to dunk on him all the time, then you're not exactly going to get back to
and
people
I
interviews.
think, and I do think that people are, maybe this is the riot shill in me, but I do think that people are needlessly, like, people say that he just does full PR speak, where as I said before, I think him basically acknowledging that the team owners were thinking, requested that they remove the challenger requirement. That is something that a previous Riot folks would not have done. Like, I've done these interviews with them for a long time, and quite frankly, John Needham has been one of the more transparent. He's not always transparent. Like, whenever he said, like, I'm happy with spring viewership, I'm like, yeah, you're not. But I do think that, like, he is much more candid in these interviews than Riot tends to be.
100%.
And I guess in that moment he was candid. So
as a North American fan, I can say that we're very used to not getting a lot of information. So I think you're actually being accurate here in saying that, like, he does give a little bit more than we used to get.
Yes,
so
and again, I know I've said this elsewhere, but they were pretty good about following up with me about making sure that interview happened. Mark?
Yeah. Cubby's doing hand gestures, and we're just stepping all over him.
No,
we don't respect hand gestures here.
I was waiting. I actually do have, like, a slight amendment to this.
Sure.
I really wish the LCS would do fight night schedule. And what I mean by that is have the best match for last. Like, LEC does this with match of the week. UFC obviously does this with, like, their big title fights. LCS cannot do that because if they save the best match for last, it'll be too late for Europe. I don't like that. Like, I feel like if you're going to have a show, there's absolutely no reason for you to give, like, people a reason to leave after the second or third game when you have a 5-game slate. And I feel like LCS just kind of, like, kneecaps themselves by having that, like, be what the schedule is. So if it started at noon and they did a fight night schedule, I would legitimately be more for that. But either way, I just want a fight night schedule. I feel like the best match of the day should be last. Give everyone a reason to, like, tune in for the whole day. See if you can get people in Europe to stay up. Like, who knows, you know?
If we do that, can we have Captain Flowers go Bruce Buffer and actually do, like, a full, like, full little fighting in this corner? Yeah,
let's go. Take his shirt off. It'll be great.
Insanity has the right idea too. Just fucking put him in a boxing ring. I was pitching. You know how chess boxing got big? I wanted to do 1v1 boxing.
There's also Creator
with
Clash.
Pro players. Well, yeah, Creator Clash as well. There's, like, boxing's just big right now. So I was saying, like, with our new content focused mindset, we should get some pros to do. You box around, you play a 1v1. You box around, you play a 1v1. And you see who wins the most rounds.
Some of these pros would shatter, Mark. Okay.
But who doesn't want to see Fudge versus Tenacity, and then they play 1v1s, and then they box?
That's
great.
That is not a good
Not
matchup,
a
my
fair
friend.
Fight.
That is.
How is it not a fair fight?
Yeah, sure. What the hell do I care?
Yeah,
Fudge is huge.
No, that's the point.
Fudge is in a different weight class.
That's the point about how it's not a fair fight.
But Tenacity's ripped out of his mind.
Okay, so I see this is more of like a jacked versus heavier kind of guy sort of thing.
Well, I also just
it
don't
could be
give a shit at all about the framing. Yeah, like the whatever points you're trying to make, just go right over my head because I just look at engagement. Like, what is this about balance? I don't give a fuck.
Oh my god. Oh my
Mark's
god.
thinking numbers. He's ahead of the game.
Yeah, true.
I'm not
here's the
thinking
problem.
Concussions.
This is
not thinking broken wrists or hands.
This is the problem. Mark had a lot of success this split with his content ideas, and I worry that much like George Lucas, Mark's second trilogy is not going to be good because he's had so much success with the first one.
Hold on, Mark. Do you plan on hiring J.J. Abrams?
No, but
That's
technically
the
that's
third
my
trilogy.
third trilogy.
It might be
and
safe.
Kathleen
Might be safe.
Kennedy
Who
has
knows?
taken
That's
over.
the third
It could
trilogy.
be okay.
Cubby, I know you're very young compared to Mark and I, but there were 3 trilogies. You're talking about the third trilogy that came out. That's the one with J.J. Abrams. We're talking about the first and the second.
Shit. It was. I mean, the second one has a soft spot in my heart. You know.
All right. Anyway,
I rewatched the prequels actually like a couple months ago, and they are quite bad.
Yeah, but it still has a soft spot in my heart. They do.
well, that's going to be Mark's boxing extravaganza whenever he's ascended and is able to do more things than just the 2 shows that he's done so far. All right, Bluejay, it sounds like we're in agreement with you here. Anything else that you want to shout out here or throw out before we get to the shout outs?
I guess the only thing is that I think we were about to all make this point, but I think if you're looking at the drop in viewership and you're pointing to the 2-hour difference instead of pointing to the Thursday, Friday instead of the weekends, I think that's also a big swing and a miss. And I think we were almost all getting to that point, but I think that's one of the main points to hammer home.
Now, Challengers viewership was way up.
Because it got rated by LEC.
Time slot or us or LEC ratings.
Glad you're the weekends.
It got rated.
Holy shit. Who would have guessed that stacking broadcasts so that the viewers go from one to the next is good programming?
Listen,
I don't
Mark. On Twitch, I've never seen anyone raid me before. And like actually, you know what's the best evidence of this? When Academy has raised it or Challengers has rated our channel for Hotline League, we end up getting twice as much viewership. Because guess what? Rating is good. Bluejay.
Also, is the crowd
LCS should just end.
Bluejay.
Rip.
Bluejay.
I'm never
No,
there
I
in
mean
person.
LCS died. I just mean like do we host anything after LCS ends?
No, we do a
I don't
rerun.
think we do.
Or we do. I think
that's
we
Pog.
do either an LCS rerun or we raid LEC who does a rerun. One of the 2, I forget.
That's a good use of resources. Do we want to host pro players and convince them to stream immediately after their matches, and then we give them hosts, or should we host LEC's rebroadcasts?
No, make players stream, please. More content.
Just an idea. Just an idea.
Bluejay, thank you for the Mark is on one tonight. He's fucking bitter. He's been watching MSI VODs all week long and he's just resentful. Bluejay,
Hey, the Oceanic region's tough. I don't blame you. I would resent those VODs too.
anything you want to shout out, Bluejay? Mark, anytime he's been sipping water so much in this, and it's every time he feels like he's going to say something and we don't want him to see his reaction. Mark's very thirsty today for some reason. Wonder what's going on there. And now he's hitting a bong. All right, Bluejay, thank you for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
No, just thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, have a good one.
See yous.
All right, we're gonna switch to a sponsored segment, which is our Alienware shout out. Go check out Alienware, alienware.com/Travis. They just sent me a bunch of awesome peripherals. I'll get a picture up about that sometime this week before I head to London. But while you're at alienware.com/Travis, please go check out the M18. It's our amazing new notebook. I've been talking about it on previous episodes, but you guys got to go take a look at this 18-inch screen. It is fantastic. It's a powerhouse. It's beautiful. It's in their new Legend design, which has been upgraded. Fantastic computer. Really, really like what they're doing with all their recent stuff. I mean, I've liked all their stuff for a while, but really I feel like their design is in a great place. And you can go look at the reviews. The reviews have been great for it too. So shout out to Alienware. They support this show and they support our content, make it so that we can do this stuff. And they've been a fantastic partner. Again, alienware.com/Travis is the link that you want to go through. You can check that out over on YouTube. Or if you're watching on Twitch, you can check it out there. clicking through to alienware.com/Travis. Thanks so much to everyone for supporting Alienware and their support of our show. All right, Mark Zimmerman is back from getting his water refilled because he's got to drink so much on this episode. Do you want... Oh, he's off to go grab a caller. That's why he's talking, but you're not hearing him. Okay, while Mark is doing that, shout out to Fishy and Peepee Doc for the subs. Wonderful names, both of you. Equally awesome. Mark is grabbing our next caller. What happened, Evie? LCS Evie in the chat dropping some sort of news? What's going on? What did I miss? I don't know. Okay, looks like Raimi is here. Raimi, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts.
And what do you want to talk about on the show?
Basically, I just had a take about the 3 import rumor rule thing. Basically, I just said that if it actually is a real thing, I think it's kind of like a weird half measure, and Riot should kind of pick a side. And I think the side they should pick is kind of modeling it after like club soccer internationally, and just completely have no restrictions on imports at all whatsoever in every region, not just LCS. And basically, the teams just play for like their own team's pride, and like there's not really much fuss about regions, and like we kind of get our fill of like regional pride or regional rivalries from like a World Cup style event with national teams.
Raimi, you should be happy that I didn't eat dinner before this because I'd be vomiting right now. That's how nauseous. No, I am just not in favor of lifting all of those restrictions. I feel like if you look at the league right now, there is a lot of annoyance about how hard it is to follow as players go in and out. I mean, like, can you imagine if we lose Vulcan and Inspired to LEC? Again, I think the Vulcan thing is less likely, but like we gave Inspired earned, somebody corrected me recently, Inspired earned MVP in this league, and then we handed him a well-deserved trophy for that, and then he's just gone. And it's just so hard to build up players whenever they're coming in and out of the league. And I do think that opening the import rule will only create more of that. And especially in a world where like teams are divesting their development system, like I don't understand why teams feel like they just, again, I guess it's just because they all think that the only solution is to win, but I don't think that's the only solution. I think I don't know. I just disagree. I'm sorry. Mark, I don't know what you want to... Or actually, let's go to Cubby, because Cubby's polite and will raise his hand and I'll ignore him.
I mean, I'm like kind of torn, because like, I think for me, the big thing is like, I just want to see players compete in the league for the long time, right? Like, I don't think of Someday and Impact as like Korean players anymore. And I've been a fan since like season 2. So I remember like when, you know, Someday won with KT Heroes, right? I remember when Impact won Worlds. I consider them to be like NA players now. I really don't care that they came from Korea. I just care that like they've played and been really good in the league for a long time. And I feel like that should be celebrated for any player that does that in any league across the world, right? Do I think that like killing off the restrictions helps with that? Probably not. Like you'd probably see more jumping, which I do find fascinating from a fan perspective. But I don't think the import rule going to 3 would like help a ton of things with like money at the moment. I don't.
I think
yeah.
Go a step further than just money. I don't see how it helps us win, to be quite frank.
That too. It'd be even across the board, which it should be, but yeah.
Yeah, like assuming all players can play in all regions, like the caller is suggesting, we are still at environmental disadvantages compared to Korea and China and these kind of things. So, one, we probably wouldn't be getting the best of the talent from these regions anyways, which, you know, we can sometimes grab good talent, whatnot, but like,
yeah.
You know, getting all 5 together, like, could we build a Gen G here? Probably not, or like a Gen G of yesteryear, I guess is what I was thinking. But like, and then on top of that fact, when they play in North America for a year, they're not going to be as good as if that team was playing Korea for that year, just due to the spread out of servers and all these like problems that exist in North America exclusively, or at least compared to some other.
I mean, it'll be like soccer, right? Where like you have the top leagues that like you have the EPL, like you have people trying to like get into the Champions League, right? Players going to go to those squads, and that likely will be based in Korea and China, and I think that it'll help those teams maybe import more Korean or Chinese players if they want to like build a roster like that. But it would be like the EPL versus the MLS, because we have the worst environment compared to like all the regions or the 4 major regions. So I don't think it helps.
So this,
and I think.
Oh, go ahead.
The final thing I was going to say is just if people saw the LS clip where someone was like, why would you watch NA over LCK then? If you're just watching Korean players in a worse ecosystem, like it's at a better time slot for you, I understand. But like at that point, the idea of regional pride is probably dead. Why do we have regional leagues? Like these sorts of things start to crop up. There's no geolocation. Like it's forced geolocation for us. Unlike in the soccer example, where there's like legitimate stadiums and these kinds of things that you can sell week over week to, which justifies the league's existence. I would argue that there's not really a justified existence of the league. Like you could just set up an NBA in Korea and have 30 teams in Korea and all the best people in the world just play in Korea in a better environment. Like, John Needham said actually in his interview where he's talking about there's too many professional teams in the League of Legends ecosystem. There's like 90 to 100 or whatever he was saying, and like Valorant, they did a better job of limiting it to 30. So that way in-store activations are easier to do without cheaping out on some of the other regions and like this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. Just make one league in one place and there you go. But then you're just doing, at that point, Overwatch League. So I don't know.
I have the opposite opinion, Raimi, where and this is weird because there's no commissioner at the helm of the LCS right now. And I worry about that a little bit because if this change is being made, so just a refresher for everybody, if this change is being made, it's because a global rule is being changed by the folks that oversee the whole global ecosystem, not necessarily the LCS. If there was a commissioner at the LCS right now, my hope would be that the commissioner would say, hey, it's okay. Global can change their rule to say that that you can have 3 import players on a team. The LCS is going to keep the rule that it has to be 2. And I think that would be actually a really good thing to do because, again, like I think the LCS has suffered under the crazy merry-go-round that is our roster shuffle and roster turnover and players coming in and out of the scene so much. So I guess I have the opposite take, Raimi, which is that they shouldn't open it up completely. I think that the LCS should, even if it's the only league that only goes down to, that only says 2, I think it's important that it does. What other region is ever going to use, even going to use 3 imports, asks Firedin in the chat. Can I introduce you to the LPL? Raimi, thanks so much. I know we kind of talked around you, but is there anything that you would like to add or respond to?
I guess I kind of want to add to the original take a little and just say that I kind of wish Riot would, or just Riot in general would just pick a side, like either kind of make it harder for teams to import or just open it up entirely. I just think 3 imports and having the majority of the team be import anyway, which kind of is the case in a lot of LCS teams with like residency and stuff. Like, I think that's already taking it too far, and I feel like at that point, like, I don't know exactly how to word it, but I feel like it's already too far gone at this point, and you should just fully commit to it. You're saying just
rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah, you're saying rip the Band-Aid off. We're already like there with some of these teams having no North American players anyways.
Yeah, but that's not the case because, or I mean, yes, and I get that, but also like Impact or if Bjergsen was still here, etc. These players are not North Americans, but they've been in the league for so long that they have, like, people care about them, and it's not LMQ.
Yeah, I think the best thing for any sport is to have players play for a long time. Like, that's what gets fans invested, whether that is the same team or in the same league. Like, the fact that Impact, again, I consider Impact an NA player. Like, I know that he won his world championship and comes from Korea, but For all intents and purposes, like he feels like an NA player, right? That's where he spent the majority of his career. That's cool. I think that any player that's like going to come and have success in the league, that's cool. I mean, it goes along with your point, like why it would suck to see Inspired go back to LEC, right? Because he had a lot of success here. He's a great player. I think he's like a top 5 player that we had in the league, even if he didn't have his best split. But like see him leave, that would suck. So I think anything that like helps with longevity is great.
Hey, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller, Raimi?
Yeah, I want to shout out you guys. I tune in every week. I don't ever really put in takes. This is the first time I've ever done that, so that was a cool experience.
Nice.
And yeah, shout out to all the pro players that are streaming right now during off season, especially M&S and Berserker, because I'm a C9 fan. So yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for suggesting that your first take ever made me nauseous. I was just, I'm trying to keep the stream interesting. Anyway, thanks so much for the call.
Nothing keeps viewers around like insulting them, Travis. Way to go, buddy.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Mark, you want to go grab the next caller? Get 80 carried. Thank you for the prime. Really appreciate it. Everyone, please stick around after the stream. I will be doing something that you can help me with for about 2 minutes. And then after that, I'm going to be opening magic packs and doing an AMA. And I know you guys all love it when I open magic packs. That's quite fun. All right. Goose is here. Goose, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take was if Vulcan does end up going to the LEC, I was saying that more NA players should follow suit and explore their careers in like minor regions, ERL, or even LEC, or anywhere else really. Because if the LOS rumors are true with the whole benchwarming thing, it's showing that NA orgs would rather bury themselves financially over imports than care about local talent.
Oh,
I'm
man,
sorry.
it's so fucking doomer these days.
It's not necessarily doomer. I think that NA has plenty of talented players out there that really don't get a chance, don't get a shot. Imagine putting them over to the LEC, putting them over to ERLs and everywhere like that, and having them pop off.
Yeah, but your line was literally NA orgs would rather bury themselves financially than play with North American talent, or I'm paraphrasing, but to that extent, that's. And
wait.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, as you're saying that all of that, my impulse is to be like, no, man, no, it's not that bad, but it's not that far off, honestly. I mean, I don't know. I'm just struggling. I mean, it's like it's so rough when you have like the EG news, and then you have the Challengers news, and then it's compounded.
I haven't even pulled an EG news take yet. We haven't even like directly addressed it. I don't even have one.
Yeah, somebody put an EG news take in the pleb calls or sub calls thing, and we'll have you have a chance to get on.
Or we'll just tackle it. Yeah, we'll see.
But you get all this stuff, and then there's all these import rule rumors, and it's just it's a trying time. It's a trying time.
I'm thriving. MSI. Woo!
Tracy in the chat says, "For fuck's sake, Golden Guardians had a good split, and everyone calls for the end." You know who's calling for the end, Tracy? Golden Guardians and 9 other teams to the end of the Challengers requirement.
Bro, Golden Guardians are the 4 horsemen plus some other random guy who showed up. When the second they made finals, we knew something was terribly wrong with the ecosystem. Your role is 10th, and you fucking ruined the LCS.
Tracy says we're literally more invested in Challenger than anyone. Okay, well, whenever summer lifts, or the requirement for summer lifts, I hope Golden Guardians is still in the Challenger system.
That is true, because all the other LCS affiliates lost out. So he's technically partnered with GG, so they kind of have like a team and a half. Not wrong. Not wrong.
All right. Is Jat in the chat? Oh, Jat's in the chat. He says
Jat's just been memeing us for being doomers.
Such a doomer mood.
Jat's on the fucking golf course, head in the sand, no fucking clue what's going on, being like, I had a birdie today.
Uh,
Uh,
I will say, like, from like players behind the scenes, and like it is kind of the start of the off season, which is kind of weird to think about right now, because like just given that like there were some orgs like looking to sell, some orgs that like didn't know like what they wanted to do yet. Orgs are starting to move now in this off season. It is pretty common for players in NA, especially if you're a big ticket player like Vulcan, who is very well respected and obviously very good at his job, to consider a lot of jobs that may not be in a home region to start off season or free agency. Just like for leverage, you're also just exploring options, right? That's pretty common. So I mean, it depends on what your motivations are. I think that I would say the EU is a more competitive league, an ecosystem. I don't like saying that, but also looking at how they've done internationally and some of the teams that like don't even make international events for them versus NA players or NA teams. I feel like it's an option if you want to go compete at the highest level. Then yeah, LEC is not a bad thing for Vulcan and some other players. And given where the ecosystems are heading, it could be like finally reach like the state where it's like more money's in EU than there is in NA, which has really not been the case leading up to this. So yeah, could be interesting.
Dear God. Okay, no, I appreciate that, Cubby. Thank you for giving. Well, I think Mark and I are having a tough time. Also, Mark, what is he doing? Oh, he's trying to pull somebody into the show, I think. What are you doing, Mark? Are you trying to pull somebody?
I'm pulling somebody from the top rope to tell us why Vulcan to EU is actually a good thing for North American viewership.
Oh, God. Is it a man who recently was in North America and is now in Europe?
It is the boomerang himself, Peter Dunn.
Peter Dunn, welcome to the show. What the fuck do you want to say?
Hello. It's been a long time.
Yes.
Why are you so rude to Peter?
Well, because he's about to say why Vulcan should leave my fucking league, Mark. That's why.
I mean, my take's very simple. My take is Vulcan playing in the LEC would be good for NA viewership.
Okay. Where's the punchline?
There's no punchline. Like, here's my take. So, right now, I don't want to get into the talk about whether NA orgs care about NA talent development and all of this. This is a topic that's been played out many, many times. It's very tiring. But what I will say is that clearly League of Legends is on the downswing in NA, right? Like, people don't take the league seriously internationally, and having a strong NA player going to a region internationally and doing well is a very good way to develop interest in a league that isn't necessarily the most watched league. You can look at this. You can look at, for instance, when Hidetoshi Nakata went from Japan to play football in Italy. It had a big, big boost on the interest of football in Japan, right? And you can have similar thing happen if, say, a top NA player, say Vulcan or say a JoJo, or I'm just trying to think of, it's 5 a.m. in the morning, right? So
FBI, Someday.
FBI, Sunday's Korean, and FBI is not the core. I mean, he's an NA regional player, but he's not. Okay, I don't talk about nationality, right? But if you had a US or Canadian player who came to Europe and did well, I think it would be good for the viewership of the league, because it would spark interest in people watching Europe, and it would also mean that if he did really, really well, European players would watch NA in the same way that an NA fan may watch Korea and think, oh, who's the next Vulcan I can bring in, right? So I think it's good.
Peter Dunn,
for
European viewers will not be like, wow, Vulcan's so good, we got to watch LCS. They will show, the only reason they'll watch the LCS is so that they could show up in the chat and be like, haha, NA is done, I have fat burgers, and haha, we got Vulcan. Like, I'm memeing a little bit, not really, because I think that's what would happen, but I think that they watch ERLs already for that type of thing. I don't think that they need another system to have as a, hey, let's look at the NA farm league for what our next player might be.
So I will say one thing, which is that NA, especially on the coach's side, so I'll make a coach's point as well as a player point. is one of the only regions that I've seen in the world where coaches and players think predominantly NA is my only avenue. Right? One of the things when I'm sorry to sidetrack a bit on coaches, but I'll come back to players in a sec. If you're an NA coach and you want to develop, I've always said whenever anyone's asked this, the best place you can develop is in the ERLs, right? But I think that a star player, like you see this in conventional sports all the time, right? Like a star player who goes to a top league, if an NA player went to LPL, it would boost NA viewership. Like 100%. Would it have the same impact in LEC? It's harder to judge. I think it would have an impact. And frankly, even hate watchers are still watchers, right? They still viewership, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, you don't have EU. How would I say this? You don't have NA fans going and sitting in the LEC broadcast and saying, "Ha ha ha, we took bucks off you in 2020," right? They're not watching LEC for that purpose. You wouldn't have EU fans doing it. I mean, you'd have some idiots who would do it, obviously, right? But that's not the principal thing that would happen.
Invert in chat wants to know if this is what happened to the LJL when Evie joined LEC.
So I looked quickly. LJL viewership is down a little bit from spring last year. So it would not appear so. DFM won again, for what it's worth. It wasn't like they became a bad team without Evie. Udapon's still goated. So at least in the short term, the answer would appear to be no.
I will say like a big part of this too is like I'll use like Pulisic as an example, right, from like soccer. Like seeing someone like do that well, like in like a top league, it will motivate like kids like actually like go pick up the sport, like play. Like the impact that like if you like are an athlete that like just transcends the sport, like a Tiger Woods, like the impact that like Tiger Woods had on golf was like unimaginable. Like how many like people like picked that up. I don't know if I can say like Vulcan would like go transcend the LEC. I think Vulcan's a really good player, and like I think wherever Vulcan goes, he'll do well. But I do think like you almost have to like transcend the sport, and I'm not sure like how much like like impact like that would have like on esports like versus like traditional sports.
Yeah,
right?
if Faker went to a different league, that league would see increased viewership.
Theoretically, yeah.
It's also the wrong way that.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Is like I don't think that like if Faker left LCK, that LCK viewership would go up.
But no, that's the wrong point to make it. But that's the wrong point, right? Like the point is that that's because LCK is the most watched league. LPL and LCK are the most watched leagues right now, right? Like if you take if somebody comes, so again, like the everything is a subject I'm not completely unbiased on, right? But interest in the league will go up. Like interest in LLA, if a star LLA player came to NA, will go up. Right? Interest in League of Legends in general versus other esports will go up. You have NA players playing internationally. That's how.
I don't
buy it, Peter. I just don't think that like this is the way it's going to work. I mean, the implication here is that like the LCS becomes an exciting farm league for the LEC, and they end up watching it because they're wanting to find what next great NA talent is going to end up in LEC.
But that's just one part of it. It's also showing that. I'm just thinking about how to describe this, right? Like the Pulisic example is a really, really good example, right? Like this is a star player who you've seen play in your domestic league, and going and playing in like another top league will make people more interested in sport as a whole, right? Like so let's take away LEC for example, right? If Vulcan were to play in LPL, I think that would bring more interest to NA.
Yeah. I think LPL and LCK like for sure. Like I think it's like may just be like an EU thing, because like both English speaking and also like not still not the top league.
And a lot of hostility between the two.
Yeah.
I mean I could see it that way, but let's say you had I don't know, like JoJo's half Korean, okay, right? Like,
Right.
Well, he is right. Like, Korean. If JoJo went and played in the LCK, do you think that would be a positive for any viewership
Yes.
or negative?
I
mean,
disagree.
I'd be bummed, but I think it'd be a positive.
I disagree. I don't actually think it would. Like, I don't think that LCK viewers would be like, okay, we're gonna go start watching LCS because JoJo's playing in the LCK. I just don't. I think they'll watch LP. There's so much League of Legends to watch. I don't think that they're going to be drawn towards LCS unless JoJo became like the face of the LCK.
I mean, if he performed well, I could see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, but again, but was performing well.
Right?
Like he has to have such an outsized performance that like people are like, oh my god.
He'd have to be like top half, right? So let's say Vulcan goes to EU.
He's top half for sure.
Yeah, top half, right? So he'd have a shot to go to Worlds, right?
Yeah.
So seeing Vulcan on an EU team in Worlds, are you telling me that wouldn't raise interest? Like, are you telling me that, say, a European team goes to the quarterfinals of Worlds with Vulcan on it, that it wouldn't increase interest in the LCS?
Yeah, I mean, the big bummer, like for me, would just be like because Vulcan was like pretty like homegrown NA talent, right? Like came through like the entire. He was like in scouting grounds, came through like the whole dev system. I think losing him would suck, but also like seeing him do well. I mean, I don't know if it like increases LCS viewership the next split. I really don't. But like, also like if he were to do well internationally, I don't think it would be terrible for LCS. I just don't know like how like viewership numbers get impacted, right? So
I think there's too many counterexamples in the league ecosystem for me to truly buy into this. Jose Diodo, I don't think had a positive like impact on that scene. I don't think the Turkish players of like Closer and Arma doing well helped the Turkish scene. The Turkish scene is actually kind of imploded, if I understand it correctly.
It would have to like transcend it. Like he'd have to be like so good, like it.
That's what I'm talking about. It's not making worlds.
Yeah.
It's like he comes in, like JoJo has to go to LCK and become the best mid laner in the LCK, and then people have to make the next jump, which is, wow, NA has amazing talent, instead of NA had one great player and he escaped that league to go to like an actually competitive league. Like, I just don't think the narrative is what you think it is, Peter.
Well, and you have to weigh it against the opportunity cost of an NA player just doing good things in NA for NA, because during that time period, like you do lose him. So if he doesn't pop the fuck off and he's just like another good guy in this ecosystem, well, I think he would have done more good for you in your own ecosystem.
I'm trying to be respectful. I know, Peter, you and I are cool and all that stuff, but I'm just going to say, I think it's fucking wild that we're still having a conversation about whether or not it's good for star NA talent to leave the league.
Well, I mean, here's what I will say, right? Like, you see this happen in conventional sports all the time, right? Like, and I think that, you know, it's not been tested properly in League of Legends, right? But my argument is that I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're going to agree on this point. Right?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Well, I guess we'll check if Vulcan ends up in the LEC and is kicking ass. Then we'll check in on LCS viewership.
Peter, I vote you run this experiment with some NA talent. Go ahead and import one of our guys.
Yeah, there's 4 players,
preferably not Vulcan,
available for you right now.
There's going to be a whole lot of NA
talent
a
couple
available
of them
when the academy scene explodes. You're well versed in the NA academy scene. Get one of those guys over there.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. Thank you, Peter. Anything you want to say or add before we say goodbye to you, and then we'll follow up with Goose?
No, just shout out to. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to shout out. So no, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good one. I mean,
I
see you at MSI. I'm going to London.
Oh, true. London is my home city. So.
Yeah. Well, pint on me, bro. Okay.
Oh, you know what? I found one thing that I'm actually excited to do in London. I found out where the tomb of Isaac Newton is, or like a monument thing that I'm going to go see. That's the one thing I'm going to do.
Is it in London?
Yeah. Okay. Pretty sure it's in...
I mean, isn't it in Westminster Abbey?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The one non-work thing I'm excited to do in London is go to Bad Moon Cafe, and Mark wants to go sit next to a corpse.
That's boring. That's boring.
Mark wants to go hang out with a corpse.
Literally the most important human being to have ever lived, arguably him and Jesus, 1-2 maybe. Muhammad up there. You know, like a couple of these people.
Okay,
You don't wanna go to
we're
two?
gonna move on. Peter Dunn, thank you so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Go to Abbeywood Road.
We're not gonna rank religious figures. Goose, let's bring it back to you. We're gonna talk about stuff. Okay, so you think the import rule should be lifted? We disagree. Anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
First of all, I don't think the import rule should be lifted, but I want to shout at you guys. I know that was a hard take. I apologize, but I'm just an upset NA fan. Second shout outs to Mark. Without him, I wouldn't have gone down the rabbit hole of competitive league with all his old videos.
Ooh. Cool.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Catch you next one.
Yep.
Mark, are we getting a blame game this week? I feel like there's a lot to talk about.
Ranking the most important people.
Nope,
in human
not
history.
that.
Where's Da Vinci in
No,
this?
Do I think? God, that would be a tough one. How much do I value the arts? Is I guess a question. I think I'm very biased against the arts.
He did a lot more than just the arts, you know.
I mean, he did a lot of like natural.
Yeah.
Like he did a lot. Don't get me wrong, he did a lot. But
all right, let's go grab the next caller.
no, there won't be a blame game this week. I'm too focused on MSI. I just don't have time to do it.
I want to die.
Hey, I mean, I'd visit Abbeywood Road at least, you know, for the Beatles. That's the one thing in London you got to go see.
Sherman, Mark was just talking about how much he's diving in on the AI stuff right now, and I was like, you need to talk to Sherman. Mark is going to go see the corpse of Isaac Newton because he's.
It's not the corpse. It's his awesome tomb monument thing.
What is in the? You said tomb.
Can you drop like an apple from the top of the tomb?
You're not seeing the corpse. It's not like a fucking. You can go to actually see corpses at places. This is not a corpse.
Is there an apple tree? Is there an apple tree by the?
Yeah, you get to buy an apple and throw it at his corpse.
Yeah, nice.
Wait, you just said it wasn't a corpse. Hey, knightsz is here. Knightsz, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Iowa.
Oh, Iowa, yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
It's
a place.
That's so excited out of nowhere. What the fuck?
It's because people aren't usually from the Midwest, and when people even know what the state Iowa is.
Cubby, are you from Iowa?
It is.
No, I'm from Chicagoland area, but I frequent Dubuque, Iowa. I worked a summer job there quite a bit.
Yeah.
Fun town.
This is one of the stranger hotline leagues we've done in a while. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
I'm here representing Mogul's take of if the third import slot rumors are true, it is better experience for NA as a whole. In reality, all NA fans care about deep down is winning internationally.
Sorry, can you explain by what you mean by representing the take?
So he wasn't able to speak, so I'm here for him.
Gotcha. And one more time, I didn't really understand. Are you for or against the import rule? What's happening here?
For the import rule, because NA teams only care about winning. They don't care about who does it.
Oh, so you're anti-import rule?
No, I'm for the import rule. I think there should be
for removal.
There should be a third slot in the imports because we need more Koreans to try and win internationally.
Okay. That would mean that you're against the rule as it stands right now.
Okay, then against the rule as it stands now for the rumors.
Oh boy. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get through this show, I promise. Okay, so we have two pro fuck NA players takes in a row, Mark.
This wasn't designed to go this way.
No, it's not. It's more of a fact that like already our favorite orgs have a whole bunch of imports. So like, why do we care if there are more imports? Like C9 has one NA player on it.
Cubby, why do we care if there are more imports?
I mean, for me, it's like also the point of like having like, yeah, there's like technically one NA player, but also like residency, right? Like, I mean, Sven's been here for a while. Like, again, I feel like it's really important for any league to have longevity of players and teams. So I do think that like expanding to another import slot, that longevity is likely to be decreased because you'll have, I mean, more people coming like overseas. And that's like tough. Like I feel like a lot of people like don't really talk about that. Like when talking about imports, like you are like taking someone like Vikla who's like not even 20. Like they have to adapt to like LA, like being away from home, like for the first time. I mean that is not the easiest thing to do. And having to do that for like theoretically a bonus player now, like maybe in their first split, like that is, I think, a really tough thing for teams to actually like take on and make sure that like those imports can be comfortable and fit in. especially if they're coming from a non-English speaking country, and like now they just all have to like adapt to be in English. So I personally, I don't think it's healthy, and I think a lot of fans, like with the money situation, like they don't realize how little LCK Challengers players makes. So I don't think the money situation is like, oh, we're gonna import, like that means you're gonna burn money like down the rabbit hole. I don't think that's as big of a deal as most fans think, just because like of how little those pros make versus like Challengers pros actually, which is another, like we brought that up earlier, but. I'm mostly against it. I just think it's like really tough for teams to handle, and I think it would not help the longevity of players in the league, which I think is important for any league for you to be a fan of, and like why I'd be bummed like we see a player like Vulcan leave, right? So
I put up a Twitch chat poll about, do you only care about winning regardless of NA status? Like, I don't know, let's say an LMQ-esque situation happens with a
C9
mid-tier
acquires
Korean team.
all of T1's challenger team, and they run them in spring and summer, and they win.
That's not a great example.
Yeah, I know. They don't. Whatever. It's just an example.
I know. I'm just saying, like that one will get biased results just because people will be like, well, T1 fans, which is the largest single team fandom in the world, would probably be excited to watch. Like that's an example where like I think that could positively increase viewership of their games as like an experiment. But yeah.
Okay. While the poll is running, I want to be clear on a couple things. One, no one here is saying anti-imports. I think sometimes this stuff gets like we talk very commonly about this stuff, but I think it's always important to give the disclosure that we're not saying, hey, we don't like people from other countries or something like that. I think the two things that are important to me on this topic are, one, I think it is important that if there's a kid from Iowa that grew up playing League of Legends and competing, he or she can look at the LCS and say, hey, one day there's going to be a potential for me to compete there. And I think that if you do not have representation of players from that region, you ruin the dream and hope of players from that region to be able to ever compete there. And I don't understand why we would have a regionalized system in a world where we are not interested in having moments like that, where somebody can go and watch a game in Raleigh, North Carolina, and say, I want to compete professionally in League of Legends. I think the other thing is, as I've said relentlessly, but I'll just mention it here again, the merry-go-round of players that are import players coming in and out of the league and doing the boomerang thing, I think is not healthy for long-term fan development. When you say, hey, you should care about Alfari, no, you should care about Whippo, no, you should care about Summit, it's not a great system, especially in a world where teams have not done a great job of figuring out how to make them fans root for the brands and the teams rather than the players. So those are the two reasons why I think it is damaging. 60% said no to Mark's poll.
I think my point is just more or less the fact that most of the most popular orgs have like 1 to like 2 maybe actual North American players on them. Like you can say they're naturalized and stuff, but that's just kind of copium for the fact that they didn't come from here, and most of their illustrious parts of their career were somewhere else. I think G2 Sven is probably more famous than Cloud9 Sven or TSM Sven. He did much more there. So it's hard to say that like, yeah, they're naturalized, so they're like part of NA now. That's just like a copium take that our players aren't actually making it there. We have like Blabber on Cloud9. And then like look at EL and like 100 Thieves. They're like all these other players.
I will heavily push back on that, just given that like I don't care as much like where a player comes from. I just care like what they've given to the league, right? So like again, Impact, like he's been an NA player like for the majority of his life. Yes, he won like while he was in Korea, like he won Worlds while he was there, but like I really struggle to like not consider him an NA player given like how long he's played in the LCS for and like everything that he's achieved here. Even if that hasn't led to the same success that he had international like previously, that guy's still a really good player and like he's only played in this league, right? So like Yeah, he's from Korea, but I don't care. Like, he's an NA player to me at this point. Like, he's been here like for a long time. I always like, I will consider players that have been in the league for a long time LCS players and NA players, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm on that train too. People talk about Sven. I mean, he's like what came over in after 2018 or before 2018. 2017 was when they blew up to that TSM roster, right? So he came over in 2018. He's been here for 5 years. That's longer than he was playing in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he had like his come up period, but like he debuted in the
season 5
EU
Worlds?
LCS. Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah,
so
season 5
he
Worlds
played
were
on
big.
Yeah. So like when he was Niels or whatever, it's still a majority of his career here, and I think a pathway to do that's cool. I don't think like to that point about just like anyone can play anywhere or 3 is necessarily great. I think a lot of it comes down to how, like you said, invested the players are. Like Sven and Fudge and Blabber and even Berserker. Like Berserker speaks English very well. He's very engaging, charismatic. I fear the day that Berserker goes back to LCK. Like that's going to crush me. I'm so invested in this kid. I'm so invested in him. I love Berserker, and like there's a real possibility that he just fucks off. And to the point about like, do people care about NA talent? Well, like I think most people agree Bjerg feels like NA talent. The most watched team in the LCS this split, I'm pretty sure, was 100 Thieves in terms of average concurrent viewers. I think they were the most popular team. And they were also for NA talent. Now, obviously, you have 2 GOATs there and Closer, who's a pretty popular player himself. And like it's a very powerful branded team and whatnot. There's more that's going on there. But I do think at the end of the day, a lot of players do, to Travis's point, feel a closer connection with a player that represents them or someone that they could be. That aspirational, like I want to be that guy one day kind of thing.
If you want to hop on board NA talent, I would invite everyone in the chat to join me as I put all my chips on Busio the way I did with JoJo. You know, that's where my chips are, on the Busio train. This kid's going to be really good in the league.
Thanks so much, Knights, for the call. And our 500th call. You're our lucky winner. You're our 500th call about the import rule. Anyway, that's really appreciate it. Do you want to shout anything out?
I'll shout out Riot for actually releasing the world states for a change.
Hey!
In a timely manner. We won't talk about the MSI times or anything, but we can talk about the world states being good.
Yeah, I agree. That is something.
Common Riot W.
No, like, it's good. It is worth shouting out because last year they fucked up a lot, and they often say we'll do better. They do not always do better. In this situation, they definitely did better. So I really appreciate that they obviously made the effort to make that work. So thanks so much, Knights, for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right. Mark is off to grab the next caller. We got Cool Cat, Bigger Frog, Yadid for 1 year, Top Hat Penguin, George Zulu for 3 years. My God. And I'm Tensai. Thank you for the prime. We have Numiii Goes Rars here in the call. Numiii Goes Rars, where are you calling from?
Hello, Travis Gafford. I'm calling from Southern California.
And what would you like to talk about on the show?
Yeah, I have a question specifically for Cubby. The take I had is, now that teams or like LCS teams may not be required to field challenger teams for either next split or next year, from a more positive or neutral perspective, what can fans do to support like Challengers League or NACL?
Watch the league, follow the players, and watch them stream. I mean, that's it. I feel like just like every player like has, you know, a Twitter. We have Challengers League. We're on twitch.tv/Challengers League and twitch.tv/Path to LCS. And Path to LCS is the Twitter you can follow. And we promote a lot of the players on there. I mean, the best thing you can do is just kind of follow them and interact with them. It's a fun league. Also, check out LOL Tomio, who is the best stream on Twitch, because all the junglers from LCS just sit on there and like shit on him. It's like Blabber, Armeo, just like talking like crap to Tomio and him like fighting back. It's really funny. And he won. Anyway. Yeah, just follow the players. Anyway, that's a great plant question. I appreciate that. Thank you for the softball.
Is this a Travis Gafford interview? What is this?
It's a plant.
I mean, like, I think that's just like an interesting conversation, right? If we're not going to have like a tier 2 league, or teams may not be required to field tier 2, right? Like, I'm kind of taking on a more grassroots perspective. Like, how can I, as a fan, like, support up and coming talent, right? Like,
Yeah.
you just talked right now about Busio. Like, if you believe that Busio will be like a great player in like whatever time frame he may be at, like, how do I watch people like Busio, or people that could be like Busio in tier 2 league right now? And like, how do I support that as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, there's going to be a tier 2 league from Riot, like whether teams are required to field, like franchise teams are required to field a team or not. So we are on twitch.tv. We'll start back up early January, but it starts at 1 p.m. Pacific, and it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We have 2 streams that do 3 best of 2s a day. It's a lot. But yeah, I mean, the best thing you do is just support it and like kind of get involved, figure out like who's good or not. We do have some players, a lot of ex-LCS players were like in our last finals, but we do have some pretty exciting prospects that actually might be looked at for LCS this upcoming year, without like getting too in the weeds of it. But like Masu and Winsome are being considered by some teams. They were pretty good for FlyQuest bot lane. They weren't even top 4. I think Insanity and all of C9 should be really considered to like get picked up. I don't know why Dignitas were importing Rich when they already had Hoon behind him, who was the best laning top laner that we had in Challengers. That was curious to me. I think Rich is better than Hoon, but like for the money and like what they're doing and another import slot, I don't know how worth it that was. So yeah, you just follow along. It's fun.
Cubby.
Yeah.
With the LCS teams pulling back, what do you think about now that it's like these teams are not playing their sister teams or whatever it might have been looking before? What about a losers tournament? It's like relegations, but there's just no promotion. But it's just like the best of the tier 2 take on the worst of tier 1. Those guys get knocked out of playoffs, and then they don't do shit for like 2 months. Let's keep them busy.
I mean, I'm for it. Like, I mean, everyone, like, every year, you know, I'm a football fan. It's like, hey, what if we had Alabama, like, play, you know, the Jacksonville Jaguars? Like, what happens, right? Or, like, you know, just the worst team in the NFL, like, what, the Texans this year? I think the odds of Riot doing that would be low, but, I mean, from the entertainment value, I mean, I'd be all for it. It'd be fun as hell. And, yeah, I think C9 Challengers, like, they would have beat... we had TLA. They were really good last year. I legitimately think last year TLA would have been like a 6th place LCS team, and then C9 Challengers this year I think would have been top 8. But yeah.
So Numi, back to your question, which is how would you support pro players that are up and coming or up and coming talent? Back in my day, we let them sleep on our couch.
Back in your day.
Yeah, you wouldn't be familiar with those, would you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm so new, that I'm 1 year old, that I only know NACL for Challenger, and I vaguely remember Academy names.
Needed support, and they were homeless. You said, hey, you can crash on my couch, and then it just works. It just works really well.
Where's that man now? Where is that man now, Travis?
If you want to support them, help them ELO boost accounts for money and write guides. Back in my day, that's how they
okay, honestly, actually, no. This is a really good point, because this is what will probably end up happening. Like, I should say, I would not be surprised if this happens, because Mark is correct. Back in the day, pro players like afforded the ability to be a pro player by in their part-time or free time elo boosting and shit like that. And so I would not be surprised if, you know, Riot is about to unleash 50 new boosters into the LCS system, or into the North America system, with this decision.
Yeah, I will plead the fifth on that one. I will refrain from commenting, especially as someone that coached collegiate, where players were not as good and didn't have any option for, you know, making summer income sometimes, besides maybe breaking TOS. Who knows?
Rathacon says, well, pro players will get banned if they get caught. Well, the problem is it's either like I think they often end up in a situation where it's like, well, I can try to go pro and
ban the entire LCS, or
what?
To ban the entire LCS,
boosts, you know, are you going to ban everyone? Ban together? Maybe the Players Association
strengthen
be like
numbers,
pro boosting?
unionize. Yeah,
I feel like that's the next step. The Players Association needs to be like, we need boosting back. This is how we close the gap. You know, they're going to fight for players and their ability to boost.
Yeah, honestly, the Players Association should be like, okay, you relented to the team owners on that. Now we need this.
What does break TOS?
Numi, thanks so much for the call. What do you want to shout out here at the end?
Don't you mean Numi goes roars?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I was going to shout out NACL and Challengers League because I've had a lot of fun the last 3 months watching, but I'm going to shout out NA Men because you said Numi goes hard. Shout out NA Men. Y'all are great. Support my podcast and support NA Talent. That's all I got.
Boom. Thanks so much for the call. Good to chat with you.
Okay, buddy.
All right. We have one last caller coming in here. Thank you to Whoopley in the chat. Very hurt by Numi. Shout out to I'm Tensei, Ostrider for gifting a sub, Shonatonin for gifting 3 subs, Neo's Fire for the Prime, or Neo's Flare for the Prime, Jordan for the 58 months, and so many things for the 56. We got Vimstrike here. Vimstrike, where are you calling from?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I want to actually give an EG take, given that all of the other takes have been about other topics.
Yes, thank you for saving us.
So my take is that EG dropping 4/5 of their roster, and apparently their entire coaching staff today, after finishing 4th, is not a sign that all LCS teams are about to go scorched earth, full budget, and stop trying entirely.
It's not a sign that all will be doing this?
Or just in general that like LCS teams will stop trying, essentially.
Okay. So are you
You're
suggesting that's
predicting
not
it is
why?
scorched earth.
No, I am not predicting scorched earth.
Okay.
Okay, do you think that is why EG, like, why do you think EG did this?
So I think there are some organization-specific factors that drove this change. Something I noticed is that they lost a lot of sponsors from 2022 to 2023. And also being a Valorant watcher in their franchised team in VCT Americas, it's only 4 weeks into the season, into the first like split, and they've already made a number of roster changes, as well as running a generally unstable team to begin with. And so this sort of like large change that they're making doesn't surprise me, and I don't think this says anything about other teams in the league.
I will just say, because I know other people have pointed this out, that they are not the only team that has lost a lot of sponsors year over year. And I don't point that out to like defend them, but just to say like they're in this situation, saying they are in this position because they lost a lot of sponsors is actually kind of undermining your argument, because other teams have lost a decent amount of sponsors too.
I mean, are you forgetting about the Chevron sponsorship? I mean, come on. That's big time.
I mean, C9 lost sponsors, 100T's lost sponsors. There's a couple others too. I mean, FlyQuest had like an ownership change, so they're kind of, it's a different situation.
Okay. I mean, fair enough. I can concede that point,
but I don't know why you're suggesting that their competitive success in VCT would be responsible for why they're having this issue.
It's competitive struggles. No. He's saying.
That's what I mean. Their lack of competitive success. Like I
just maybe I'm not phrasing this point properly, but
sure.
Like it seems like their organization roster construction philosophy is to make a lot of drastic changes based on what they've been doing in League now, as well as what they're doing in Valorant.
I mean, I can just like, we'll see what roster they end up fielding, but from everything I've heard, this is financially motivated. So I don't think that it's necessarily like, oh, we got 4th, and so we're going to make dramatic changes. If anything, you make those changes usually between spring and summer. It's very hard to find like the talent that you would need. If you're like, we're going to blow up this roster, most people blow that roster up between summer and spring, because that's whenever you have the most amount of free agents or trades available. So I don't think it's a roster philosophy. I do think it is a financial situation. To broaden your takeout, yeah, I don't think that you can look at EG, and I agree with you in that you cannot look at what's happening with EG and apply that to all 9 other teams in the league in terms of, are all of these orgs going to just run budget rosters and give up? I very much agree with that. You can, however, look at what some of the other orgs are doing, like voting to remove the challenger requirement by, in a lot of cases, dropping players, in some cases, renegotiating salaries. A lot of these things, I think, are about them trying to, I mean, all of them are about them trying to lower costs. I don't think that means, like, everybody hears this stuff and it feels very bad. And a lot of it is pretty bad. And there's obvious reasons why it would feel bad. I do think that there's a world where, like, salaries just get smaller and you take a step back, and this feels a lot like what the league felt like in 2017 in terms of you have players that are playing for 100 to 300K and not necessarily 500 to 1.5. And you have staffs that are not a situation where you have like a personal masseuse and every position has a positional coach. Cubby,
I'm sure Charlie would make a great personal masseuse along with everything else that he has going on with TSM. You know, and he does everything.
You're gonna have a lot smaller staffs. Like, I think that people incorrectly assume that just because we're seeing cuts, that means it's all doom and gloom. When in reality, like, the LCS was thriving at a time where, well, there was a lot less money being spent by the teams. And so I don't think that you can necessarily say more money equals better, like, viewership, because it's not, like, it's actually, if anything, there's been an inverse correlation. So things do feel pretty bad right now, but I don't think that, like, all of this means LCS is dead.
I like the positive spin on the fact that enjoyment for viewers and viewership as a whole is not really correlated with the amount of money that teams spend. If they were spending that money on fan-facing things, sure, but they don't. So while they have cut their content budgets and stuff like that, that's not good for fans. Yeah. It's not like it's better, but like maybe this will drive players themselves to take on more of a role for that or something. Who knows? But the negative angle, I appreciate that positive angle. The negative angle is that it just sucks that this EG roster is dead. I enjoyed this EG roster. I think they were really fun to watch, even when they were like burger flipping games and like inting their lives away. Like, I had fun watching them. I don't think this team reached its full potential in spring. Everyone said they were scrim gods. I think there's a world in summer where they make worlds and they look pretty good. I feel like with them gone and Bjerg leaving 100 Thieves, depending on what happens there, you're in a world where the LCS just got substantially weaker. It's possible that they get spread to the winds and create stronger teams. But my thought is that they're dead, 100 Thieves kind of dead, potentially. And then you have FlyQuest, C9, and maybe Golden Guardians as your best three teams. And, like, I don't know who rises up to contest them, with the other two closest teams now being in trouble, as well as CLG's turnover with energy, I imagine being somewhat disruptive to the players' mentality.
Yeah. But that's summer split, right? Like, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out going into next year.
Well, that's what I mean. Is like it is short-term disappointing to see EG's demise, not on an org level even, but just like for this group of 5 guys.
But no one's going to be able to watch Worlds this year anyway, so they won't even, like, it won't. It'll only be disappointing when it comes to international results.
I'm just talking about. I'm even just talking about North America, man.
Oh yeah, you just want to see more competition. Yeah, that's fine.
These 5 guys competing in summer would have been more interesting than probably what's going to happen.
Sure.
100 Thieves is not dead. Twitch chat. I'm just saying that with Bjerg retiring, it's a blow to that team as well.
What's that noise, Mark, that I keep hearing?
I locked him up in the room with me, and he hates me so much. He's screaming to get out.
Yeah. Interesting how disruptive a cat can be. Okay. Thank you. Actually, Cubby, did you talked a little bit about this, right? I want to make sure we got all your thoughts.
I mean, I can explain this by money. I feel like that's all you need to know to, like, for why the decisions are being made. I feel like a 4th place finish, let's say if they take 2nd or they win the split, do they blow it up? That's a legitimate question. That's an interesting topic, you know, you can talk about with, like, any sports, but it feels like money motivated. And honestly, like, for EG, yeah, if they want to go back to being dev focused, I mean, that's fine. I just hope that, like, when it's dev focused, like, it will actually be dev focused and, like, they actually roll the dice on a couple players, because that could be interesting. I think it's interesting when teams do that in the league. I don't think it's great when every team.
Cubby, if you were development focused, would you lay off your whole coaching staff?
That's a good point. No, probably not. I'd want to, still invest in that staff. But again, we're explaining this with money issues.
Yeah.
And that PR statement, the esports PR class. I mean, me and Kelsey actually, funnily enough, we always joke about like having a PR consulting firm for esports because of how just terrible PR is in this space. I think EG could have used some of that advice with that post.
Well, they wouldn't be able to afford it anyway. The
Oh boy.
I think the challenge is, I just wonder if they become like a Dignitas level team, right? Where, I don't know. You know what? Shout out to Golden Guardians, because I do think it was really nice where I think they were the only team to ever be like, hey, our finances got fucked, and so our roster got fucked. Everybody else says like, we're going to focus on development, stuff like that.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate they did try development. Like they didn't just say, "Oh, our budget got fucked. We're gonna try development," and then they just like get a bunch of like cheap veterans. Like they actually tried developing talent, and like Niles flopped, and like some of these players struggled or whatever. But like they tried, and they are what I thought a lot of teams would be in a franchise model, where like when you don't have talent on your roster, instead of trying to sign talent, you try and develop it. And then once you have a couple of pieces, you build around them. Like they actually did what I thought a lot of teams should have done.
I agree. And I think that I would love if EG goes back to that formula, because I feel like if you were going to be a mid-tier team in the league, then you have to roll the dice. Because if not, then like, what are you doing, right? Like you are asking to never be the top team if you are not rolling the dice. So I feel like I want to see how EG rolls the dice, and I feel like it could be kind of interesting what they end up doing. I've heard a couple crumbs, so yeah, should be curious.
Just for quick context, I wasn't saying Niles is a permanent miss. I just meant that version of that.
Yeah, definitely. Missed. Both him and Iconic should have started in academy, but that was not the case. They really rolled the dice. So,
Vimstrike, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
No, I only started playing and watching this game last summer, so I don't really know how LCS history works, but it's been enjoyable. I went to Raleigh finals, had a lot of fun.
So you're a new LCS viewer.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
Wow.
Get all your friends in here. Get them all in here.
How did you end up getting into the LCS?
Honestly, I discovered that some of my friends played this game, and I decided to download and start playing solo queue.
I'm sorry for your loss.
So you started playing solo queue. How did you make the jump from playing solo queue to watching LCS?
I mean, I was a Twitch viewer. I just never watched the league section. It was advertised in the client a lot.
So do you remember if you clicked in through the client, or did you just like look at, you just opened up League of Legends Twitch at one point in time and you saw it was up near the top?
Twitch. I just
Hmm.
decided, hey, let me start watching because maybe this could be interesting.
This was the most fascinating part of the show.
I'm so glad we learned this like little nugget at the end, because I am so down with like most people just like the game. They like League of Legends. Generally speaking, there's plenty of lapsed gamers who still watch the LCS, but like for new players or like new viewers, a lot of them will be current players.
Vim, who is your favorite team?
Point.
Vimstrike? Who's your favorite team?
Yeah. I don't have a favorite team.
Why not?
I don't see the point with all the roster changes. I'd rather just like certain players.
Thank you so much for the call, Vimstrike. I really appreciate your call, more than any call that I've heard in the last 250 episodes. Anything, I guess I already gave you shout outs, right?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yeah, me too.
With all the roster changes, Okay, that's the show. Cubby, thank you so much for coming on. I'll give you a shout out, but Mark first. Anything you want to shout out?
Nope, just got to grind my face off for MSI. Pog.
Cubby,
Best
how
of
about
luck.
you? What do you want? What do you
It's a
want
lot
to
of
shout
odds. Yeah, shout out to Challengers League. I obviously like it's a really curious spot at the moment. But shout out to that league. Riot supports us. Anyone that competes in that league, the new teams that promoted. Yeah, the best way to support me would be to follow me on Twitter and Twitch. So it's CubbyXX for both. At the moment, I got to go over the VOD review for the finals for the promotion relegation tournament where Maryville got in, and then I usually just play Team Fight Manager or some bullshit in the off season. It's fun. But yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. It's been a good time. So we'll see what is in store for challengers moving forward. But yeah.
Cubby, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
My brain is still fucking broken by the way that the call ended. Oh my god, that is just people think it was
Vindication.
scripted. Like it's
Great
but
actor.
it's a sample size of one, I know, but like his answer was not I'm a fan of none of the teams because they all lose internationally. It was because of the fucking Okay, anyway, thanks everybody. I'm going to be in London. I'm flying later this week, and I'm going to do media day stuff and have a good old time. I'm going to try to do some Magic the Gathering meetups in London while I'm there. So if you like Magic the Gathering, stay tuned for, we'll do some Commander and draft and stuff like that. But I'm going to be over there for 3 weeks. Please support my coverage while I'm over there. We're working on securing a sponsor, but I think there's going to be some couple weeks there where we won't have a sponsor. So if you like what I create, please sub or I don't know any follow me on different things. Follow me on Instagram. That nobody's following me over there. It's slowly dying. Anyway, that's it. Bye.